security is actually an illusion. This is actually something that does not really truly exist in nature, in the natural world. It doesn't even exist in our artificially created environment that we live in now. Anything could happen at any moment. You could step off a curb and get hit by a car. You could be struck by lightning. There could be any kind of a natural disaster. With all of the horrific things that are in the alleged vaccines and the medical system today, people can get all kinds of toxic problems in their nervous system, in their central nervous system, in their hearts, in their arteries, and people could really drop at any given time. I mean, at this point, we really have to be thankful for any amount of time that we're given based on all the toxicity and poison that is surrounding us and in our environment. So there's no such thing as security. This is sold to us as something to be desired, and it's an illusion. And yeah, everybody likes to be relatively safe, relatively comfortable. Nobody is really an exception to that. I don't want to live in an alley. I don't want to live in a cardboard box in an alley. Who would? Who would desire that condition? And the other thing is that's not spiritual. It isn't spiritual to be super ascetic. Right? Everyone wants to think spiritual people live as paupers. They live as poor people. They live in that cardboard box in the alley with no possessions. Who are you going to reach and influence in a situation like that, where you're just trying to meet your daily survival needs? Let me tell you something. People who are teaching this stuff should get themselves into a position where they're at least, I'm not saying live a lavish lifestyle, don't twist and confuse my words. I'm saying get yourself into a position where you at least have the ability to do this in a comfortable capacity, where you're able to procure the resources that you require to do this at a decent level, and then put some thought, some energy into it, some aesthetics into it. Make it look halfway decent, make it sound halfway decent, and you don't have to be perfect, folks. This is what we teach in How to Become the True Media, okay? So when it comes to procuring that at least modicum of safety, security, comfort, there's nothing wrong with that. That is not something that is immoral to do. That is something that we would be required to do if we're really going to give our best in an effort like this to present this type of information. That's common sense to me. So to the people who say, oh, you shouldn't have any extra resources, or you shouldn't have any of all this type of equipment or that, it's like, whatever. More likely the people who are saying that have never really done it and don't know what's involved. Enroll in the How to Become the True Media seminar. You'll find out exactly what's involved. You'll find out what you have to be prepared for. You have to find out what you're going to need resource-wise. You'll find out the kind of things that go wrong. Let me tell you something, folks. When I deliver the How to Become the True Media seminar, it doesn't always go smoothly. There are technical problems. I make mistakes. I show people all of that. You have to be prepared for that. You have to expect that. Okay? No one is perfect. People will see me making errors. They will see technical problems happen while I'm trying to do something, even in the course of the seminar. And then I show them what to do. You got to compose yourself. You have to think, what was the causal factor that led to this? The potential causal factors. Then you start troubleshooting calmly, and you go in a stepwise progression. Maybe at some point in the near future, or maybe the slightly distant future, we'll see. I might give an advanced version of How to Become the True Media for intermediate to advanced users, during another time. And maybe I'll teach some technical troubleshooting, stuff that, like, if you are even going to be an ancillary supporter of another content creator and you need to know how to troubleshoot computers, maybe I'll teach that. That's what was my forte when I was involved professionally in a corporate capacity in the technology environment, in the technology world. I did professional desktop troubleshooting for a while, and I was extremely good at my job. And that goes to show you how difficult it can be to manage even a medium operation like what I have going. I say in the past, I run a rinky-dink operation or whatever. It's a very small operation. I'm going to say my operation is around medium-sized by a general gauging of, how these types of operations go. It's outgrown small size, and I would call it a lower medium operation, not a large medium operation, but a smaller medium sized operation. Certainly not a large scale op. But again, I try to treat it with respect and do the best that I can with the resources that I have. So just going to this idea, relating it to the unholy feminine presentation, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have a modicum of resources, a modicum of comfort to do this type of work. But what I'm talking about here in this presentation is every single waking moment of the day. They have people conditioned to think only of their own needs and only of themselves. They wake up thinking me, 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 me. They go through their day thinking me, 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 me. They fall asleep thinking me, 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 me. That's satanic mindset. That is the definition of what Satanism is only thinking of yourself all the time and never thinking outside of yourself in a wider way. That's the very definition of Satanism. And people, as yet, still don't understand that. So we were talking about them injecting this illusory desire to always have security. Okay? They want the inauthentic woman, as I've called their brainwashed, mind-controlled version of a woman, not what an authentic, genuine woman is and should be in our world. They want to create the false, inauthentic version of a woman that's going to help them accomplish their goal of worldwide human slavery. And that version of a woman, the inauthentic woman, would be largely motivated by the psychological desire for attachment and security. To the inauthentic woman, love is simply seen as a form of permanence and attachment, and a means to an end to get certain resources and security, rather than a deep familial bond with another human being. And once again, I want to really clarify, and we're going to talk about this in detail later on. I really want to clarify what I mean by the familial bond versus the family. They are not the same. They would be, again, likened to mental gender, which is inside biological males and biological females, versus physical gender, which is the dichotomy between male sex and female sex, the actual biological genders. So you have to look at this concept of the familial or familial bond or familial dynamic, however we want to refer to it, as being the underlying foundational framework for the family unit that would sit on top of it. The base is the familial. The familial bond or dynamic is the base of what the family sits upon. The familial bond is the foundation. That's why I'm continuously reinforcing the notion throughout this extended presentation that the familial bond is what is the most important dynamic in society between men and women, which is why they want to create the psychological gender war. They want to create the socially engineered gender war between males and females in our society, because ultimately what they want to break down is that familial bond. If you break down that familial dynamic, you lead to the much easier breakdown of the family and the family unit. So, and that's what they want, because they want people atomized. They want people not as powerful because they don't have a cohesive bond between each other in society. They don't want that bond between men and women. They don't want that bond between parents and children. They don't want that bond between a human being and really anybody else, truly. They want people atomized, scattered, and less powerful because they're not bonded together like strong bonding in molecules, like carbon bonding. You know, they don't want that type of a strong, deep bond which builds a solid structure, as solid as diamond. That's what the carbon bond builds in the physical world. Well, the familial bond builds that psychologically and in a familial love capacity, which then extends to a wider love capacity, the agape form of love. So, They don't want that familial bond forging between the woman who is unfortunately right now in our society largely the inauthentic woman that the social engineers have socially engineered and brainwashed. They don't want that deep familial bond forming between them and any other human beings, whether it be friends, partners, children, etc. Money and government are often perceived by the inauthentic woman as assurances of comfort, assurances of prosperity, assurances of long-term security. Let me say that again. Money and government are often perceived by the inauthentic woman as assurances of long-term comfort, prosperity, and security, when in fact they're really the exact opposite. They're putting people into bondage. They're putting them into a prison society. They're putting them into psychological imprisonment. They're putting them into physical imprisonment. And ultimately, this is ultimately about destruction of the soul. It's spiritual imprisonment. So think about it. Just think about the social dynamic. Think about the social engineering aspect of this, folks. If you are going to brainwash an entire society and you know the men and the children are going to be influenced by the women that they are around, because that is the first and deepest familial bond, the bond with the mother, okay, then you have to get to the woman's mind and influence it in a way toward what is going to lead to your end goal societally, what the Satanists, what the social engineers, what the globalists want. They want everybody dependent. They don't want interdependency. They don't want strong familial bonds building a stronger society. They want people unfit. They want them unhealthy, mentally, physically, spiritually. They want them weakened in every conceivable way. And so you're going to start by mentally breaking them down and getting them to think that the things that are going to actually enslave them the most are the things that are going to liberate them the most and are going to bring them the things that they say they want, when in fact that dynamic is completely turned upside down and it's satanically inverted. And what you're actually making them want is the thing that leads them further and faster into their own enslavement. That's the genius of the Satanist plan. That's the genius of the social engineers of our world. Once again, I tell people if I met them, I wouldn't try to put a knife to their throat. I wouldn't draw a gun on them and put a bullet in their head. I would extend my hand and say, absolutely, unbelievably well done, sir or ma'am. That's what I would do. And I'm serious. I'm not even joking around. I'm absolutely serious. If I met some of the top level social engineers, all I could do, I don't respect them as a human being, but I certainly respect them as an opponent. They're evil, they're psychopathic, they're the worst kind of human being, if you even want to refer to them as a human being. They're the worst kind of predator. But I would extend them my hand as a gesture of respect between opponents, because I respect what they're capable of doing. Because I know that they know exactly what they're doing, and they know how to get the job done, and they're doing it. So, I'm not joking around when I say that. It's not like, oh, ha-ha, Mark would shake hands with the Satanists. I would. And I would tell them, you guys know what you're doing. And you tried to tell me that years and years ago, and I wouldn't listen to what you told me about how really badly screwed up you have the minds of the people of this entire planet. And now I understand. Now I know. And you didn't lie to me. You told me the exact truth about where the dynamic is actually at. And I didn't want to listen because I was a naive young punk at the time and thought that I knew better about where people are actually at in their hearts and minds. And I was wrong. I was wrong. There it is. See, it's not so hard, folks. It's able to be done. You can acknowledge when you're wrong. That's a hard, bitter pill to swallow for me, let me tell you, because I really wanted to believe that people were better than they are. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, I was unimaginably wrong. And yet, I've still continued to do this for the past 17 years, because I want to see people come up out of that condition, because I believe they are at least capable of doing it. I believe the capacity for coming up in consciousness and out of the mind-controlled conditions that people are in is possible. I didn't say it will happen. People have to will it for it to happen, but it is possible. It can be very difficult depending on where people are at and how badly their brains have actually been physically damaged by the pathways that they've sent it down and locked it into. But the brain itself is plastic, meaning it is capable of being flexible and returning to different states and being pushed into new states of consciousness and functionality. So, what does the social engineer want to do? They want to get the inauthentic woman who is going to ultimately direct the rest of society hooked on the idea, the perception of money and government as assurances of comfort, prosperity, and security. The primary desire for financial security as a resource for safety can be most readily seen in our culture in the most frequently asked question by a woman to a man when first meeting, which is, undisputably, what do you do for a living? In our culture, particularly in Western culture, the very first question, once pleasant niceties are exchanged, some nice pleasantries get exchanged between a man and a woman in a social setting, is the woman saying to the man, what do you do? Meaning, what's your job? What do you do for a living? Because the very first thing on her mind is if there is any possible potential for us in the future to have any type of a familial bond, a relationship dynamic, etc., she wants to know how much money the man is making, because her first desire mentally is for the security that money does in the short term in our artificially induced and created society, bring stability-wise in a familial dynamic or a relationship. So think about that. Is that natural? Is that normal? Is that something that everyone would just normally do? Because I'll say that because there are some cultures still today on this planet where that is not done. So if you're going to say that's just completely based in genes or, quote, evolution or the natural progression, then why isn't it done in every single culture on Earth? There are some places where that is not the primary question. Overwhelmingly, in Western culture, it is. Make no mistake about it, let's not lie, that is the dynamic. Most places in the world that are dominated by Western culture and general Western value system, if you want to call it that, the very first question after pleasantries are exchanged that a woman may ask a man, they may ask where you're from first, maybe how old are you? That probably comes after. But in general, after basic greeting pleasantries are exchanged, the first question coming out of the woman's mouth, the inauthentic woman, which is almost the vast majority of women, especially in Western culture, is going to be, what do you do to make money? Ultimately, this desire for security is the desire for an illusion, since there is no such thing as true security as long as you live in physical reality, which we already talked about. There are always hidden dangers lurking. There are always things that you did not expect. There are always things you did not account for. There are always unknowns that may affect your health, that may affect your physical well-being. And let me tell you something, folks. Take nothing for granted about safety ever. Take nothing for granted about how much time you have. That's why don't wait. Start now. Put something good out to the world. Create something that is good, that teaches people. That's what we're here to do. We are here to create, to be a mini lowercase c creator in the image and likeness of the capital C creator, and put your own creations out into the world to help to enlighten humanity. So take nothing for granted and realize as long as you're living in the physical world, there are dangers, and the desire for security is ultimately the desire for something that is illusory. So, let's move on. The search for security in a man with money or the desire to be simply quote unquote taken care of by someone else is an integral part of the ego gratification, me, satanic mindset. Let me say that again. This is why the neo-feminism agenda and the idea that the man is there for security purpose, the man is there to have the woman be taken care of, the man is there for comfort and an easy lifestyle. This is the idea. This is the very essence of a satanic mindset, because this social engineering is satanic and is derived, it is formulated, and then it is executed by the globalist Satanists that ultimately run our society. They are dark occultists, they are Satanists, they are occult practitioners. And this is an occult agenda, specifically a satanic one. The idea that you are going to live by way of someone else is a satanic me mindset. And think about it. How much of that is taught to modern women? How much of that is absorbed by women in modern society? How many women, ratio-wise, percentage-wise, think that way, want that, think that's just the very first thing that they should be desiring and looking for and trying to attract? It is putting all of the moral aspects and qualities of a being on the back burner. And if ever, rarely looking at those things, certainly not putting them paramount and looking at them first. Instead, you're putting the wallet first. You're putting the bank account first. What if they make money selling weapons of mass destruction? What if they make money selling horrible, devastating to the health drugs in the modern big pharma system? Is that okay? What if they're completely gambling with people's money in the stock market or exchanges, or all kinds of betting systems that go on through, the shorting process of the market and other, financial machinations and manipulations? What if they're doing all of these immoral things? What if they're the biggest piece of crap on the planet? What if they're an order follower, which most people, even in those industries that I just mentioned, are? But then we can go even into deeper evil, the cult of ultimate evil, the order followers of our world, the military and the police, and specifically the police, which are the lowest order followers. The ones that just live completely among the population and act as the house slaves of society, beating the other slaves until they comply. Imagine, most women wouldn't even care if that's the job, as long as they're being, quote, provided for, as long as they're being, quote, taken care of. Is that an authentic woman? Is that what an authentic woman seeks and desires? I'm not necessarily saying you want to go court a bum in an alley. Well, let's face it, folks. Obviously, no one wants to live that way. But what I'm asking is this most women of today's society their primary thought process? You better damn well believe and accept that it is, because that's the truth. Sadly. Okay? Sadly, they're not looking at how moral a human being is. They're not even looking at how intelligent a human being is. They're first and foremost looking at how much money does that person make. And you tell me, who does that reflect on? And let me tell you, once again, that's primarily the biggest place where that functions and is deeply entrenched is in Western civilization, because that's what they're targeting, because that's what's going to move all of human civilization toward the end goal, the agenda of the globalist Satanists that run things. So, is that normal? Is that natural? No, it is not. It is socially conditioned. It is socially engineered. Again, this idea that, and you know who it murders me the most, folks? I want to just take a moment here and just tell you. In all of my years attempting to explain these particular dynamics here in this presentation, women have been the most responsive to it. I'm going to say that. I have gotten the best responses, the most respectful responses, the most deeply well thought out responses from females in our society. The worst responses to this presentation, the most resistant responses to this presentation have been men who have insistently and hard-headedly believe and continue to believe in the Darwinian notion that the way things are in modern human culture today on our planet right now, in the modern day, is completely influenced by Darwin's idea of macrobiological evolutionary process, which, number one, does not work the way Darwin said that it worked. And again, this presentation is not to go into a debunk of that or even explore that in depth. Okay? I've done enough research on my own to say that Darwin's theories were highly suspect and flawed and used simply to continue to promote eugenics in our world. Not borne out by the fossil record in any level of detail whatsoever, which Darwin himself insisted that it must for it to bear any true weight. That evidence has never truly been provided for in a scientifically scrutinized capacity. That being said, I'm not a subscriber to Darwinian evolutionary theory. I do believe in human evolutionary process that takes place at a macrobiological level at some point and then is handed off epigenetically and takes place in mental processes to progress as an evolution in consciousness. Then it could develop into anything, even to go beyond the body, even to go beyond the physical. That's where epigenetics can ultimately take us. So, I want people to deeply understand that it is not just the way things are, and it is not just millions of years of evolution that led to people behaving like this. If you believe that, you are already brainwashed. You are already brainwashed by an agenda that was laid out 150 or more years ago by a person who was deeply connected to eugenicists, family-wise, and the eugenicists of the extended family of Darwin and Galton, etc., brought these ideas into their agenda because they fit them like a hand in a glove. And if you don't understand that and you haven't done that homework, I actually feel sorry for you as an adult human being, because it really means you're kind of dumb and you really haven't put yourself into the position where you're actually doing the required homework. You haven't read the right books on the topic. You haven't read the right analyses on the topic. You've kind of accepted what the mainstream media and modern government grant money funded alleged science, which is scientism, has crammed down your throat for the past 150 years, for the better part of the last 15 decades. Okay? And you really need to play catch up. Okay? As I said, you're not privy to the new shit, man, as the dude would say. Okay? Get privy to the new shit and get up to date and catch up with the rest of us who are actually able to think in a critical capacity regarding the new scientific unfolding and developments in modern cutting-edge sciences that take consciousness into account and understand the entire realm of epigenetics, especially social engineering dynamics within that subset of epigenetics. And please get out of this notion that genes control everything and that it's always that's just normal human evolution. What it tells me is you know not a goddamn thing about mind control. You don't know anything about how our deepest inward aspects of the human psyche can be completely twisted, can be completely deceived, can be completely directed and steered if someone really knows how to do that societally. And let me tell you something, that's who these Satanists are. They're a priest class of that level of influence and power. And nobody should take them non-seriously. Nobody should think they're a joke. Nobody should think they don't have that level of power, because they do, and more. And let me tell you something. The people that they're absolutely, metaphorically, beating their heads to mush with a goddamn hammer are men when it comes to this very topic. Because I hear it from dumbass men all the time saying, women are like that because that's just how biological evolution has progressed with the female over the last 10,000 years. You're a fucking moron, is what you are. Okay? You're an absolute fucking childlike moron, because the statement absolutely betrays you and shows how little reading you've actually done. It shows you've cracked open on the origin of species, which is actually written in a racist capacity. And I'm not one of these people to make everything woke and say it's all racist. I'm telling you, Darwin himself was, and he was formulating that like a pen man for the extended societies that he was involved with and around in a capacity of eugenics. And if you don't believe that, you're just a dumb motherfucker who hasn't done enough homework and you haven't done the required reading. This is where I get very upset with people that try to tell me my conclusions are incorrect, when as soon as their mouth opens, I can tell how ignorant they are and how little they've read. Because they don't have the grammar of the trivium process gathered and under their belt. So how could they possibly move on to the analysis of the material? Or even worse, put it out there into the world, or even worse than that, tell someone who has done that entire process ad infinitum that they're incorrect. No, I am not. I am correct. This is not conjecture. This is vetted. This is vetted with the true scientific methodology, the trivium method. Learn it, learn how to employ it in your life, and utilize it. And then maybe you'll bring your consciousness out of the shitter, and you'll actually elevate your understanding to the required level to understand how the chess masters of our world think and the fucking number they're doing on you, boy. Let's get that clear and straight. Okay? So, to the men out there that do not want to hear this message because you want to think it's all just biological evolution, you're being led by the nose by your satanic overlord social engineering masters. And you're a punk bitch to them. You're punked, you're bitched, you're cucked. Let's get that straight, boy. Okay? And let me tell you something. They call you things far worse than I just did. They call you the dead, son. The dead. Because you're dead to them. I'm at least trying to still talk to you like you're alive. And try to impart some wisdom to your deadened mind. And get you to see what's right in front of your fucking face, to plainly see if you just open up your eyes and get the shit out of your ears. Okay? They already consider you dead. And so anything they do to you is fair game, because they're not even doing it to a living being. They call you the dead. Okay? And you know what? Half of the time I tend to agree with them. So again, don't tell me this presentation targets women. I'm targeting everybody. I'm going to tell people as fairly and equally that they're a dumb bag of shit when they are. And I'll praise somebody when they've really learned it equally, men and women. When they really show some deep understanding and they're getting their minds elevated to the place that it has to be for them to understand the psychological tactics that are being used against them by the social engineer priest class. Then when they do understand that, I'll give them credit for it and I'll praise them equally, men and women alike. So let's get it straight. Favorites are not being played here. Okay? Very few want to see and admit the truth regarding that even the desire for security, the desire for a man with a lot of money so you have quote-unquote security, is satanic. That is the satanic, socially engineered mindset itself, manifesting itself in the mindset of the inauthentic woman. Most do not want to see it admit the truth regarding that. Most will attribute this to Darwinian theory, biological process, when in fact this behavior is deeply ingrained social conditioning and social engineering. It is not the way things are naturally. It is a socially engineered, induced state of consciousness that is conducted and employed and deployed epigenetically through the human thought process by what media has been bombarding the brain since the person came out of the womb. And especially in those first developmental and formative years of human development from birth through 7 years of age, which is called the formative years of a child's mental development, and it is a hypnagogic state, which is a state of consciousness that exists in between waking and dreaming, which is the most suggestible state. It is similar. It is called hypnagogic because it is similar to hypnotic. Okay, it means it's going hypo means underneath. Okay, and then gnosis is the realm of knowledge, the conscious mind, the realm of knowing at a conscious level. So hypnosis means you're underneath the conscious mind at the subconscious layer of the mind, the most suggestible and programmable part of the human psyche, the hidden or occult part of the psyche, which is what we have to get into. We have to do the shadow work to dig down deep into those layers of human consciousness. It is the subconscious processes that largely are directing our behavior because we have not done any work to dig down to them, deal with them, and bring them up to the non-hidden, non-occulted, conscious layer of human consciousness, of the human psyche. That shadow work is what we have to learn how to do, to come out of this satanic mindset and this brainwashed programming aspect of how most people currently think. And that includes all of the men out there who want to say, women are just like this naturally. It's totally perfectly normal and natural and part of their biological evolution to act like that. No, it isn't, moron. It's all social engineering. All of it. Not some of it. All of it. Blanket statement. Because, once again, there are cultures where women don't act like that. They're largely completely indigenous, remaining ancient indigenous cultures that are found fewer and further and further between in modern day society. So, if you do encounter some civilizations like that, or read about them, or watch about them in a documentary film, you will see not all of them have this mentation. It is not just a naturally occurring dynamic within human consciousness. It is socially engineered. Sadly, most people desire a state of safe and secure slavery as opposed to one of dangerous freedom and its associated personal responsibility. Those are really our only choices, ladies and gentlemen. You can have safety. A perfectly safe society is a perfectly enslaved society. Let me say that again. You can have safety to an extent, okay? Because once again, a comet could be on the way to the planet. We wouldn't even know it. It could hit the Earth next month, and everybody's gone. Could flash vaporize the atmosphere. But you can have a relative modicum of human safety in the physical domain right now, at least in the short term, but it's going to involve being completely enslaved. You want to live inside of a cage? You'll be safe, but you'll also be completely imprisoned. So let me say this again. Sadly, most people in our world today desire a state of safe and secure slavery rather than a state of dangerous freedom, yet and the associated personal responsibility that goes hand in hand with true human freedom, which is a dangerous condition. Because you have to allow the possibility for chaos. You have to allow the possibility for danger, for freedom to truly manifest in our world. There has to be the openness and possibility for danger and chaos even, for there to be true freedom present. It is a dangerous state. It involves the responsibility that goes with accepting potential danger. You have to accept a great deal of personal responsibility into your own life to be truly free. There is no such thing as true freedom without true personal responsibility. It's why the state of true freedom is so deeply psychologically feared by almost everybody, all of the inauthentic men and all of the inauthentic women of our society. They don't want the responsibility that comes hand in hand with the state of dangerous freedom. That's not total comfort. That's comfort that comes along with freedom and prosperity that comes along with freedom and the mental, physical, and spiritual evolution that comes along with true freedom. But it goes hand in hand. It is partnered. It is paired. It is wed to the true personal responsibility that must, by definition, always go hand in hand with true and dangerous freedom. Most men are also in this manipulated mindset. I'm going to keep reminding the men out there. This presentation is not just for women. As a matter of fact, one could argue it's even more for men. Okay? Because they think so many things about the behavior of women in the modern society, about the inauthentic women, are just biological processes. And they never look behind the curtain. They never look into the subconscious aspects, into the occult aspects, and the occult dynamics of how social engineering works. They're afraid to look at those things because then you know it would reveal to all those inauthentic men out there how you're brainwashed, how you're manipulated, how you're being robbed of your birthrights of freedom, how you're cucked out. They don't want to look at those things. They want to believe, oh, I'm some real man, when they're an authentic bitch punk is what they are. They're an inauthentic bitch punk calling themselves a man, and you don't even know the definition of the word, boy. You're a bitched out cuck put into that state of consciousness by the satanic social engineer priest class, who you'll never meet, who you'll never know, who you don't even know how they think, and they got you. They got you by the non-existent balls that you think you have when you have none. They already got you, boy. You got, is what happened. To put it in street terms. Okay? So, I'm going to keep going back and harping on the guys in this presentation. Because let me tell you something. It's one of the reasons I re-delivered this presentation. Because I realize men don't want to look at this content. They don't want to realize it's true. They don't want to realize all the satanic conditioning that not only the inauthentic women in our society have undergone and are currently ensnared by, but they don't want to understand how their mindset is also captured by it. The realization that death lurks around every corner in our reality is the state of reality that the authentic man and the authentic woman live in at all times and places. Let me say that again. The realization that death could lurk around every and any corner is the state of reality, true, objective reality, that the authentic human being lives in at all times and places. And they don't fear that. They're not driven and motivated by the desire to always escape that reality. They accept it. They learn it, that it's the case. They can do what they need to mitigate that, to continue to function and have the requirements and resources that they need. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they don't live in fear. The fear of death is the beginning of all forms of slavery. The fear of death is the beginning of all forms of human slavery. Let's move on to the next slide. And again, my little meme there that I put there is, this is the life of most modern people. They have the proverbial carrot dangling on the stick in front of them to move them forward, and instead of a carrot, it's a pile of cash, and they're running headlong into the grave. And that's most people's lives. And it's not a life at all, it's pathetic. That is the definition of pathetic. Okay? And that's where most people are at in our society. And they've been put into that state. So let me ask you a question. Is that normal and natural? Is that Darwin theory, biological evolution? Tell me, is that not how most men behave in society today? Would you not say that that's a perfect assessment of where most men in our society are at? This is why men don't want to understand the social engineering that's done to women, because then they got to look at the social engineering that's done to them and realize you're just in as just of a shitty position that you find yourself as the modern inauthentic woman. And so they want to make up shit. Like this is just the natural state. This is just how women are. This is just their nature. When it shows you know nothing about human nature. Because once again, if you believe human nature is good or bad, you don't understand social engineering. You don't understand the true nature of a human being. And yes, a human being does have a nature. Does a computer have a nature? Does a microphone have a nature? Does a glass have a nature? Yes. They are functional things that are there with a purpose, for a reason. They're not just random things. A computer computes. It processes information. A microphone picks up and it transits sound from one place to another. A glass holds liquid. This is not rocket science, folks. People also do have a nature. The answer is not people don't have a nature. The answer is the nature of a human being is not good or evil. The nature of a human being is that a human being is programmable through information. Let me say this again, because I want to clarify this, because I think people still aren't getting it. Okay? If people got it, they would be able to explain it back to me. And I would see explanations of this from other people to other people. When I go on social media, when I go online, when I look at people's presentations, and some do. I don't want to make a blanket statement and say no one understands this. Most do not understand it, folks. It's not a blanket statement, but it's one of those generalizations. That it's the overwhelming vast majority are still in this condition. They do not understand what I'm saying here. That human beings do have a nature, but the traditional things that people have argued about over and over, is the nature of humanity good? Is the nature of humanity evil? They don't get the dynamic. It's all about information that goes into the mind that is going to program the body computer of the human being and their psyche, and is going to highly influence their behavior toward a particular way of manifesting in the world, and then creating the external circumstances that we then must live within. That's how our reality is built and manifested. We take in information. We process the information. It comes out as our decision-making thoughts. Then we act in the world based upon that decision-making process that we did, based on the information that we took in. And then we act in the world, and then the world becomes what we are experiencing collectively in the aggregate through that behavior. If the quality of the behavior is good, we have order, freedom, prosperity, etc. If the quality of behavior is bad, we have slavery, chaos, and death. It's not rocket science, folks. This is the basis of the real laws of attraction, the true occult laws of attraction. So, we have to understand that if we want to change what we're experiencing, you don't do that in the last step. You're not going to just change the behavior. In order to change the behavior, you have to change the decision-making processes that go on in step number 2 of the trivium. And in order to change the decision-making process, you have to reprogram the computer up here with different information, with higher quality content, with higher quality data, with higher quality information. Because if really good things go in, the processing is legitimate and it comes out very well, and then the behavior that we then enact onto the screen of life that manifests as the current human condition is also going to be good quality. Quality goes in, quality comes out. If garbage goes in, garbage comes out on the screen of life. Like a computer. You program it, well, the program's going to execute, it's going to do exactly what it needs, you're going to have a good output to the screen. If garbage programming goes into it, it doesn't process properly, garbage comes out on the screen. That's the same way it works with a human being. We put good content and programming here, the processing is going to be perfect, we're going to understand what needs to be done, we're going to then enact it and align our behavior to that, and then good things follow on the screen called life. The reverse happens and garbage goes in, well then garbage is going to come out on the screen of life. Once again, not rocket science, folks, but probably a handful of human beings on this planet could actually explain it to somebody. They're not clear on how it works, okay? And I'm going to keep harping on men in particular on this because they've actually been more resistant than women who have seen this content. Let's move on. This is all about putting people into that mindset, is all about getting them to think about value in a certain way. The very conceptual thought of what is valuable to someone is one of the things that is the most deeply socially engineered in our society. We have to stop equating money with true value. Money is not true value. Money is, in the form that we use it in the Western civilization, a form of fiat currency, which means that someone just makes it up out of thin air and decrees it to exist. It's not even a natural thing, or physically. And then we believe in it. So the only place that it has any actual power is in the belief system of people who say that it exists and believe that it exists. And then we are attaching a perceptual idea of value to it because we say, in our current state or condition of existence, we require that to have any power in the world to be able to do things because everything is associated with money. Having resources to buy a computer, a microphone, food, etc. It's required to do that because of the way society is currently set up by the very people who set it up. Okay? The requirement does not exist in nature. It exists in the artificial construct of modern human society. See, you have to understand first and foremost that money is not naturally occurring. It's an invented conceptual idea. Everything in my work, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to, again, emphasize this and even harp on it a little bit because I don't think it's still fully integrated and understood. Otherwise, I wouldn't go and revisit these topics. Okay? It's still not grasped by the vast majority of people who have heard my work. The entirety of the body of my work with what on earth is happening. Everything that I've done, the main crux is about the difference between the natural versus the artificial. And I'm trying to get people's minds out of deep association and identity latch. It's a latching of identity. That's how deeply profound and powerful the mindset is that people are in, that they are brainwashed into. They are latching on to the artificial construct and believing it to be real, believing it to be inherent, believing it to be intrinsic. These things, truth, anchored, objective reality, something that exists inherently in the natural domain is not something that is a conceptual, constructural idea. And the very concept of money is a conceptual, constructural idea to act as a medium between things that do exist in the natural domain. The body of my work is about the delineation between the natural versus the artificial or the constructural. I want people to really deeply consider and understand that, because the very first thing that we have to understand is if you're equating money with value, you are equating the artificial with something that then you are even imbuing with more artificiality. You're saying this completely illusory artificial thing that's all constructural in its makeup and doesn't really exist in nature, I'm going to actually associate that with something that does have true natural and intrinsic importance, which is a value system. And if money is the root of people's value system, that equates with making it your truth. That equates with making it your identity. And that's what leads to all forms of evil in the world, which is why the quote biblically is not money is the root of all evil. It is the love of money is the root of all evil. Look at this as the attachment to money is the root of all evil. Look at it as equating money with true value is the root of all evil. Word it like that and you'll understand the heart and the spirit of the message. The saying is not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. Making money the thing that you think about, that you're attached to, that you're identified with, that you love. That's the root of all evil, because then people become a person that do evil things for the paycheck that they receive, or they condone the doing of evil things for the paycheck that is received and what's done with that paycheck. See, that's why they want to continue to have that artificial constructural money coming in, because they equate it with a value system. They equate it with what they can do in the world as a result of having it. Okay? They equate it with their own identity. And let me tell you something, folks. That's loving it. That is associating it with everything that you hold true and hold dear. And that's what real love is supposed to be. And this is completely satanically inverting that process of what real love is supposed to be, turning it on its head and making it all about resources that aren't even really natural. They're illusory and constructural. And they are artificially created and they are artificially propagated. They don't exist in the natural world. Real intrinsic value, first and foremost, comes from the truth. Secondly, comes from principles and value. Then it moves down into people, the physical people themselves. Then it moves down into, their potential characteristics and personality traits. After that, it moves into the physical. And the first thing is air. Is you're going to live the least with no air. Okay? That's the thing that has to be present in abundant qualities is breathable air. Number 2 in the physical domain would be drinkable water. Number 3 in the physical domain, edible food. Number 4 in the physical domain, the ability to shelter yourself from the elements and survive physically. And, then tools and the ability to keep those things. Shelter yourself, clothe yourself, and then the tools to manipulate the physical world to the extent that you are able and keep the things that you have by using technology as weaponry. And not have it just completely stolen by people who didn't produce or do any work to create that value. That's the true Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay? And if you really understand that and you understand what has intrinsic value, what is injected and inflated with artificiality and an artificial concept of value constructurally and ideologically, then you understand false value versus true natural value. So the inauthentic woman is socially engineered to perceive money as the primary value system in human life, hence to then try to attract and go after the man with money, the often and almost always inauthentic man, leading an inauthentic lifestyle, who is not being rewarded for anything that is, in 99.9% of the cases, that anything that is moral or of true value in society, but is doing something to receive a paycheck like some trained animal and or wind-up toy soldier, and often doing things that are immoral and completely, against natural law. And most women, the inauthentic form of women, will just see that as perfectly fine and acceptable trade-off for the comfort that they'll receive because of those resources coming in. And that's the problem. That's where the social engineering comes in. This is not about wanting to provide for children, wanting to have a safe environment for children. This is all socially engineered to get them to perceive the money as a true form of value instead of a false, illusory value system. They don't want people to see it for what it is. They want them to desire it and love it. And that is how they then do evil and condone evil. Because the love for that artificially created constructural idea that is not part of the nature of the creator then leads them into doing destructive and evil behavior and condoning destructive and evil behavior to be continued to be done. That is why how many women societally, how many will openly come out and say government's a terrible evil and should be abolished? And I'm not saying there aren't many women in the truth and freedom movement that understand that. I'm saying it's still societally few and far between if we take humanity as a whole, because most of them are attached with the idea, oh, if government goes away, then look out into society, how many men are going to behave in a truly moral capacity? Well, that's the only thing keeping them back from doing, coercive things and things that are violent and things like rape, etc. That's their mindset. It's all driven by protection. It's all driven by safety. And it's all driven by, if I find a man with a lot of money, that's resources to do whatever I want to do in life, whatever we want to do in life, to have a relative degree of safety, to raise a family, etc. And once again, I'm not saying that it's a terrible thing to think to want to have those things in the degree that we require them to be able to actively do those things. Forge a familial bond, have a family, provide a relative modicum of safety for a family, etc. That doesn't mean those things are evil. I'm saying that the social engineering that is conducted to put people into the mindset that this is first and foremost the primary aspect of importance when it comes to money. And that's the value system that has to be there before morality is there. See, if women were asking the question, what do you do for a living? To answer the question deep down in their mind, is the person's job a moral one? Instead of how much money do they make? Then it would be a valid question. I want to know, the only reason I want to know what somebody is doing in society is because I want to know if they're in right livelihood or not. Most women are never thinking about right livelihood. If somebody says, oh, I'm a well-paid, high-ranking member of the pharmaceutical industry, most women would think that person's making a whole lot of money and they don't have to worry about money ever. They're not thinking, how many people have already died as a result of the poison that you guys push? You see the difference? Looking at is someone within right livelihood versus how much money do they make? Because plenty of people make a ton of money and they're nowhere near in right livelihood. And some people are paupers, but what they're doing is very moral and they are in right livelihood. You see, that's the difference in the nature of asking that question. And most people, they're on the wrong side of that equation, and they're asking it only to determine how much money do you make so we can live in relative comfort if we decide that we are going to forge a relationship and live together. This general mindset postulates that something is only worth doing if money is being made by doing it. Is that the only measure of value? If no money can be made, Does that not mean that true value is being generated? If something is truly worthwhile and beneficial to human beings and human society, can someone not do something that is incredibly valuable, truly in the natural world, and not be compensated monetarily for it? Let me tell you something, folks. Most of the tens of thousands of hours that I have spent creating and presenting this material, okay, is not monetarily rewarded. It's nice when it is, but the overwhelming majority of the time, I'm not being compensated for what I do. Not in any sense that I would say is truly equitable and balanced. It's way more free work is being done than is what is being compensated for monetarily. Okay? That's not even a factor in my mind. It has to be somewhat of a factor, because if I have no resources, I can't continue doing this because I can't pay for the things that I need to pay to continue to do this. So there is some aspect where, yes, resources have to flow, but that's not the determining factor of value. Value is how many minds are being changed for the better. Value is how many more people are coming out of an immoral condition of consciousness and moving toward a moral condition of consciousness and moral alignment with natural law and true morality in the world. That's the real value. Like I said, while I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, I have what I require to continue to do this work. If it doesn't stay at the level that it is, and it slips down, and people don't order things from gifts, or order art drives, or provide voluntary donations, or take the How to Become the True Media seminar, I wouldn't be able to continue doing what I do. Obviously, there's going to be a certain amount of physical resources required to do this type of work. If it did slip into something really bad where I wasn't bringing in the necessary resources, I'd have to cut the operation back very significantly. Probably sell equipment, sell computers, not do all the operations that I do. Maybe move back to an audio podcast only. Lots of things could downscale if people don't show the value, the appreciation for the value that I'm attempting to put out there into the world. See, that's the driving dynamic. If you're putting out real value into the world, people are going to see that. They're going to appreciate it because it's helping them to change for the better. It's helping all of society to change for the better. And then they're going to recognize that value, and then they'll contribute more resources, whether in the form of technology, money, help, etc. That's how real value works in the natural world. Okay, whether I'm receiving real value in the form of assistance and help, whether I'm receiving the artificial form of it, which I can translate back to the real form of it, when it comes to bringing in monetary resources to buy the things that I need, it's a cycle that you can keep going back and forth between the artificial and the natural, by taking the artificial money, getting the things you need, converting it back to real value, and putting it out there into the world through communicating principles and truth. So